Hello, my name is Don Wall, and I feel led to put together some information because I'm kind of concerned about what's happened today in San Bernardino. I especially do not want to grieve anymore the very tragic and unfortunate victims of this incident, along with those who were injured. And there's just some facts that I need to have answered so that I can, I guess, belay the fears that I have going on in my mind that something much, much bigger, much, much more sinister, is possibly manipulating world events right now that could lead to extremely terrible consequences. Okay, so let's just take a look at the evidence of the shooters. Okay, we have a seemingly happy young man named Saeed Farrak and his new wife, Tafin Malik, and she is from the Qatar or Saudi Arabia area. And recently they had met online. They have a 6-month-old baby now, and in their workplace, a place that Saeed had worked for 5 years, they were granted or received a celebration of a baby shower, and they also attended an event, or he did, a year ago, same event, that function that was going on, a holiday Christmas party, in this exact same center that they were located at today where the shooting happened. Okay, so there's some facts that, for me, not only do they not add up, but they look like they could be covering another scenario. And I want you to really think about this. If certain individuals and certain parties of global influence wanted to draw the U.S., France, and other Western nations back into a conflict in the Mideast that could easily flame up to World War III, an all-out devastating war, what might they do to manipulate the public in order to get the right kind of initiative and incentive to send troops on the ground back into conflict? Not only troops, but major amounts of equipment, and fund the industrial military complex and the powers of economy that are part of some of the global leaders' goals. So, with that said, let's take a closer look at this event today. I've gone through several reports, and of course the story is fluid and it changes quite a bit in the first 24 hours, and it has, just in my own research and facts. I want to take a look at this particular timeline. This is called The Heavy. It's a news site, online site, and when you Google, this guy, they're one of the first ones to pop up. It talks about the shooter and his history in California, and along with some of the history of Tafin Malik. Okay, so at this time they're still not sure about a third element of the attack squad who was detained. They're not saying for sure whether or not he was really involved. It could have been just somebody who got caught up at the scene where the SUV shootout occurred, and he saw a big incident and was trying to get away and was running away. Or then again, perhaps something more is going on there. But according to their reporting, Saeed had gone to Saudi Arabia and met a gal that he had met online, and they got married, and they had a baby who's now 6 months old. And according to the reports, they dropped the baby off in the morning, saying that they had a doctor's appointment to go to, and so the baby was left with the grandmother. So as we went throughout the day, we heard all the reports, and at first, I'm sure you, like I, had heard that there was no way to identify the shooters. The shooters were wearing masks and dark outfits, and they didn't make a sound. But they were very calm and collected and calculating in how they carried out their shooting attack. Now, in this report, we have an incident report here where an officer told dispatchers that at about 11:40 a.m., this witness said a male left the building out of the blue. Others earlier had said that he was angry or upset, something that happened on inside the facility. And so then he goes on to say, and 20 minutes later, the shooting started. I don't have a lot of other resources to vet this, but I do know that I've heard other people saying that the actual shooting happened around 11 a.m., not 11:40 a.m., but let's just go on from this. Okay, so from what we know, this individual was not wearing his tactical gear at the time, or he would have stood out. If he had a planned terrorist attack, a planned attack of any kind. Okay, so he leaves the scene, and he goes to his home, and his home is in Redland, California. And if you do a little research, you'll find out that that home is about 15 minutes away from the shooting scene. Apparently in this time, he collects himself, maybe calls home. He drives home, picks up his wife in Redland, California, 15 minutes away. They get re-outfitted in tactical gear and load up their weapons and ammo and pipe bombs and get everything in order. And they apparently bring the baby with them, drive to the grandmother's, drop off the grandmother's, and say they have a doctor's appointment. Then they head back to the center. And all of this is supposed to happen. The 15-minute drive one way, 15-minute drive back, the drive to the grandmother's, the loading, the re-outfitting, and apparently the shooting started 20 minutes after he was seen leaving the shooting scene. Again, this male who matched this the description of this guy leaves out of the blue. 20 minutes later, the shooting starts. That doesn't add up. Okay, that's my first point, and I'm going to bring over some other facts that I have questioned. Okay, here, nobody ID'd the suspects in the center as they were wearing masks. That was the initial report. No one reported a female being involved, and we all know body types. That should have been something that would definitely stand out. Yes, body armor could take away some of the distinctions between male and female, but still there's added body language, things like that also would have stood out. Neither of the shooters made a sound during the attack. They could keeping their voices from revealing them, or keeping their voices from not identifying them. If somebody chose to keep their voices completely silent and were playing to be this couple, and they're wearing all black with ski masks and stuff, and the way that the attack scene would have played out with a lot of panic and chaos, would it be possible for somebody to think they saw something that wasn't there? Yes, of course. But the fact that nobody immediately, you heard no reports on any of the media that these guys were identified, except for there was a name that was bandied about. Most of the reporting that we saw on the scene, though, everybody was saying that they weren't able to identify them. The way that these executions, shootings were played off were very smooth, very professional, it sounds. Okay? So we're led to believe that this happy, quiet, yet always kind employee who celebrated his baby shower there a few months ago that his co-workers had put together for him, and additionally had attended the same holiday function a year ago at the same location, okay, he has all of a sudden become so upset that he convinces his new bride to throw away their American dream family life that they were living, just throw it completely away and go and slaughter individuals that were, strangers or friends that they had known for just a little while. And do you really believe that a young mother would choose that path? and aggressively take that path? Do you believe everything that you see and hear in the news? And how would some GoPro cameras planted on their bodies help convince you? In other words, what if, sad to say, these were not the shooters, but the shooting was carried out by black ops individuals who would go out of their way to plant evidence? If they would terrorize citizens like this, do you think it'd be beyond them to use GoPro cameras and other evidence to frame up individuals if the diabolical plan would be to draw us back into a World War III? The media painstakingly restrained itself all day from calling it terrorism, and then finally, going with the facts as they were released, had to release the convincing evidence. And yet, in CARE, the Association for American Islamic Relations, is paraded out in unusually quick fashion to condemn the terrorist attack. Before it was even really confirmed full out in the media that it was terrorist, CARE parades themselves out to speak out against this, quote, terrorist attack. So let's go a little bit deeper into the story. The SUV is later found out, and there's a chase scene in that San Bernardino area. Okay, now we're led to believe this was a carefully planned out operation, right? They have tactical gear, they have all this weaponry, pipe bombs, equipment, they have an exit strategy, a planned out strategy. And yet after the shooting, they move out in this black SUV. They know they've been identified because they left the scene slowly at first, not to raise attention, and then they sped off. So they knew they were being observed as they left the parking lot. So yet they go home and they stay parked at their house, and over 3 hours later they decide to make a run for it, to flee the scene. Does that sound like something a very trained terrorist team would do? So after they're made out, fleeing this area, we don't know for sure if they're fleeing the massacre scene because they were guilty, or did they realize they were being set up to be the scapegoats? Okay, this is where I'm not really sure yet about all the facts, because I don't know if this is perhaps when they dropped the baby off and said with the grandmother that they had to take off. And the reason I think that is not the case, that they actually dropped the baby off perhaps, and I'm sure these facts will come out, so hopefully this will clear up some of the information. But how could they, be in that situation and be discovered as the police were coming to their home, discover at that point that they needed to hurry up and exit their house and still make the rendezvous with the grandmother? It doesn't seem logical that kind of procedure would happen. So let's just go on a little bit more here. There was no shells recovered from the SUVs that were shown on camera. Okay, so we don't have real documented proof that they were firing from the SUV because there was no footage of them actually shooting at the cops. Okay, in the chase scene, there was reports by the cops that they were shooting at them, and there are several clips of people who were randomly on the street and pulled out their cell phones and started filming. But in all that footage, the ones that I've been able to find, the weaponry that's used is all the same. You don't hear the mix of different types of rifles. You hear one particular gun, and it's the officers' weapons that are discharging, and they're discharging to the speed and repetitiveness that nobody could survive. It's almost as if they wanted this couple not to be able to speak. And it's very, very sad if what I'm saying bears any credible reality. But the woman was driving, and all we know is that she tried to flee and was cut down in the street and laid in a pool of blood. You don't see in any of the footage that I could find her body actually wearing tactical gear. She's covered in a tarp, and they show the footage of an individual pulled out of the van from a helicopter that's got to be 1,000 yards away, zoomed in, and you don't really see very clearly, and the body doesn't look like it's wearing tactical gear at that time. So conveniently, there are suspicious objects inside the vehicle, and reports of suspicious items inside the care center where the shooting took place, and so they need to detonate. And in those detonation procedures, you can't really see exactly what all is taking place. The cameras are gone, or they're not zoomed in enough. You don't know if evidence is being planted. You don't know if evidence that was in there or was not in there was destroyed by the detonation. So these are some facts that I think that need to be verified. And I know that these vehicles, with all that's been going on with the police force, must have had dash cams for the chase scenes when the firing started. Now, they said that Farouk was sitting in the back and shooting out the window. That should be shown at least on some web or dash cams from the officers that were in pursuit, and that should come out, or let's hope it does. So then again, there's also the identification of Farouk from the center. Okay, we have a very violent scene, a lot of chaos that was going on, but somehow from the center, where initially nobody knew who the attackers were, nobody could identify the shooters, somebody was ready and had collected themselves enough to quickly make a connection between a disgruntled employee and a couple of unidentified marksman type shooters and say, oh, it's got to be Farouk. And so this tips off the police, and they go around and interview other witnesses who are traumatized, and they start associating his name to the attacker, and they get a search warrant, and they start running to his house. I'm just hoping that I see a little bit more facts on all of this, of how this all came together. Again, why would this professional terrorist team have such a carefully planned out attack with all their weaponry all ready to go, somehow make this miraculous jaunt from the workplace to home, get suited up, come back, and do all of these things together to leave a brand new babe, a 6-month-old, to leave that life, and even if they were dedicated, and he was a devout religious person, but not of the violent type from what his dad said whatsoever, and his brother-in-law was in shock. Now, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. You can read into it whatever you want there, but I just need to see a little bit more of the evidence. So they're going to flee after waiting for 3 hours when they know the cops have been flooding into the area, and they're supposed to be an experienced or a very professional team, a very well thought out planned team. They're going to go and hide out until the cops start buzzing all over the place and then flee. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess there's a couple other facts, and I can't even, it's really late, early in the morning actually, and just putting all these things together, but I wanted to put this out there because, again, it just came to my mind today. The incidents in France, tragedy in France, and now this here, and what's all going on, and some of the things that have built up to fund ISIS and train ISIS elements and let them fester and grow over the years. And all of the different parties around the world now are being dragged into ISIS campaign, and Turkey and Russia, and now Japan is getting involved, Germany is getting involved, Britain is getting involved, and it looks like America's going to have an all-out, campaign here to get us more involved now. If you just listen to all the reporting, I just want to challenge you to think who might want to draw us and manipulate these types of events to draw us back into the Mideast. Just want you to have your heads up. Okay. Thanks for listening. This is Don. We'll see how things play out over the next few days and all the facts come in.